I'm Marianne Niskowski. I'm a program manager on Azure Communication Services.
And I'm Chris Palmer. I'm also a program manager on Azure Communication Services. So we're going to click. Oops. So just our agenda today. First, we're going to start talking about, just introduce the overall service. So what is Azure Communication Services? And then we're going to have a bit of a code walkthrough and demo of building a .NET Azure function that actually is going to send SMS messages and make phone calls, all to power a notification style scenario. I think in the last talk there was a lot of great engagement about Azure Functions, and so it's one of the things we're going to cover here too a little bit. So first, what is Azure Communication Services? So this is a development platform we built this year. As you might imagine, Microsoft has been building communication services for Skype and Teams for many years. And what we've done is we've taken that global infrastructure and we've made it available to developers as an Azure service. And there are a couple of channels that you can use with Azure Communication Services. You might hear me call it ACS. One, chat, so you can deliver rich text communication in a custom app. Be it mobile, it can be desktop, it can be web. You can implement voice and video calling, so a very traditional 4x4 people in a boxology talking to each other on a video call, or just having voice. Those calls can engage with the traditional telephony system. So you can have phone numbers call into a voice call. You can also acquire phone numbers directly from Azure. So if you don't necessarily have a phone number, you can go to the Azure portal, or using our .NET SDKs, you can programmatically acquire a phone number. If you'd like to bring your own carrier, a lot of organizations have relationships with carriers already where they acquire phone numbers, and you can use open protocols like SIP to connect those carriers to Azure and interact with your own telephony system and the Azure platform. And of course, if you have telephony, you can send SMS messages. And again, you can use your own numbers, or you can bring some numbers, or you get numbers from Azure. So those are the primitives that you have with Azure Communication Services. I'm going to talk about business cases or scenarios you can build to kind of tie these things together. The first one is real-time human-to-human communication. So you can imagine you're building your own application, again, web, desktop, mobile, and you want to have a real-time interaction between human beings with voice, video, and text. And you can, knowing that it's an open, programmable Azure platform, you can build those applications using your own identity system, using your own concepts of communication. So you might have a concept of, say, rooms, or clubs, or threads, or chats. Whatever concept you have for bringing people together, you can implement those concepts on the programmable platform. You can have users log in however they want. So if you have your own identity system, or if you're using Azure Active Directory B2C or B2B, and you can implement your own user experience. So we have UI SDKs that help you build a classic communications client, but you can implement your own fairly custom experience. And one case study that you can look up online is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a fairly popular social and enterprise, helps you find jobs, helps you engage with your workplace community. And they have a wonderful messaging system, and they wanted to add voice and video calling directly in their application experience to increase engagement and make it a more compelling platform. And they did so using Azure Communication Services. Another scenario that's a bit specialized, it's a type of person-to-person communication, but we do kind of split it up because it has certain unique experiences, is virtual visits. So this is where you have a consumer talking to a business, a B2C interaction. These are often time-bound. They have a mechanic around, say, an appointment or a meeting. And there are a couple of places where you can imagine virtual visits are happening more and more. So one is healthcare. So you have a virtual visit with a doctor or a nurse practitioner to talk about something that might be happening. You can imagine using it for classrooms and educational purposes, and working with, say, a mortgage officer to get a home loan. These are all cases where you can have a consumer schedule a virtual visit, and you can have them engage in voice, video, and text communication in a custom app. An interesting part about the virtual visit scenario is that Azure and Microsoft Teams are interoperable. This means that your Azure Communication Services app can join a Teams meeting. And this is ideal for settings where an organization might be using Teams internally for their employees. So if you have a nurse practitioner whose day-to-day job might involve mostly healthcare, but every now and then using Teams for collaboration, they might like using Teams to go engage a patient in a virtual visit. And the patient can be using a custom application, my healthcare app, my banking app, et cetera, that gives them a fully customized experience. But again, the healthcare provider is using Teams, which they know and love. The last scenario and the focus of our demo and code walkthrough today is notifications and marketing. So this is where an organization sends an asynchronous communication. It's not necessarily real time. It's not necessarily human to human. It's more of an organizational semantic where you're sending somebody an SMS, a phone call, or a chat that says potentially a reminder for a virtual visit. So you have an appointment coming up later today. There are a couple of scenarios you can imagine, not just appointment reminders. One is deliveries. So if you have a classic, I'm getting a package, or you have a courier, or some other delivery service, you can imagine sending someone an SMS or a phone call saying your delivery has arrived. Outbound marketing. So you have a new service, you have an event, you want to market that service, and so you send folks a text message. And also public service announcements, a road closure, a school closure, weather report. Those are all things that you can imagine sent as an asynchronous communication from a service or organization to people. And we're super excited to be here today at the .NET Conf because we took .NET support very seriously in building our platform. All of our subsystems have .NET SDKs that allows you to build both client and service experiences. That's one of the great things about .NET is that it works in a client context, so building a Windows desktop application, but also works for services, like we're going to show today, building an Azure function, or building an ASP.NET service that engages with Azure Communication Services to communicate. Now Marianne is going to show a little bit of code and dig into a little bit more of notification scenarios. We're going to hand over this laptop just a bit, and we're going to make sure we're going to have Slack and everything is good to go. Because there's a phone demo, we have an extra cable.
Yeah, coming soon. Phone demo coming soon. So Chris talked a lot about the different scenarios that you might want to notify your users in the situations or business cases that you want to send information to your end users or employees. I'm going to talk a little more about what those channels are that you can send those notifications over. So with Azure Communication Services, our goal is to make it easy for you to reach out to your customers in a way that makes the most sense for their context in your business and code and infrastructure. The demo that we'll be walking through today is going to build an Azure function that will send or call our Azure Communication Services SDKs, and will send a notification through 2 different channels to my phone, the phone demo. And this will be just a single participant receiving different notifications through different mediums, but you could picture every participant or every recipient of the notification might have their own customizations or own preferences of how they want to receive these notifications. And the great thing about Azure Functions and why we're kind of using Azure Functions today is it's highly customizable. You can kick off these workflows or kick off the function from basically any application or service, right? Using REST APIs, you can also easily plug it into Power Platform for more automation. It's also serverless computing, so a lot less code, a lot less to maintain. And of course, we're at .NET Conf, so you can write these functions in C# or obviously other languages too. So what does our function do, and what demo are we going to show today? I mentioned we're already going to build an Azure function that's going to call Azure Communication Services SDKs, and that's going to send a notification to my phone through 2 different channels. It's going to send an SMS message, which will have a text that I'll receive, and it will also call the phone number and play a pre-recorded audio file. So I think some of you might have interacted with these before, where you answer the phone and it says, your appointment is on Tuesday at 2 o'clock, like press 1 to accept or 2 to cancel. So that's the exact scenario we're going to enable today. The only inputs that we need for this system are a source phone number, which Chris mentioned earlier. You can purchase through Azure Communication Services either through the portal or programmatically through our .NET SDKs. And we also need a destination phone number. And again, this is a small scale demo, so I'm just going to be sending it to my phone, but you can picture, you have your whole CRM list of phone numbers that you'll be reaching out to your customers. Okay, let's get to the demo then. So I'm going to plug in my phone real quick and get set up. And I'm pulling up Azure Portal. So I'm going to show my function that we've built out here. And I'm going to run a test. So this is a pretty simple.
Oh, man. I think we have to Windows P and duplicate.
Oh. One sec. There you go. That looks way better. OK, hopefully everyone can see this now. But I've pulled up the Azure portal. I have here my Azure Functions, send notification. And this is a pretty simple HTTP trigger. So I'm just going to post a message. And I'm going to include the destination phone numbers and source phone numbers. Oh, no. One sec while I pull up.
We're going to code in real time.
Yeah, this is how you know.
The demo is real.
Oops. One sec.
While Marianne's working on the note, so you can send phone numbers, you can send SMS messages and initiate phone calls. When you initiate phone calls, you can imagine the end user who's receiving a phone call will interact with that phone. They might press buttons, send touch tones. They might hang up eventually, of course. And you can use notifications through the .NET Service SDK to respond to that. So you can use those flows to implement a fairly sophisticated touch tone system. So you have a pre-recorded call. Hey, you have an appointment at 10 o'clock today. Press 1 if you're going to come. Press 2 if you're not going to come. And if they press 2, you can respond to that and potentially cancel the appointment or take other action in your service.
OK, and I'm going to type in this here. So we're putting in our source number. And this is the number that that we've purchased through Azure Communication Services. And so this is just a 1833 number. And then we also have our destination phone number, which will be the phone number for the test phone that's going to receive the notification. So that's the customer phone. And that, again, we're just sending to one phone number at this point, but you can picture having a full list of phone numbers that you're contacting. And here we're going to send the SMS message. And this is going to be true. So we're going to send. This will all be worth it, I promise.
It's going to call stuff. It's going to be crazy.
And then the message body is just the message that we're going to send to our customers. So this will be anything that you want to share. So in this case, we might just say, like, your appointment is today, right? But you can put anything in here. And then we're going to work on the call. So I'm going to add a phone call, since we talked about sending out the phone call. And in this message, we're going to obviously send it because we want to see the phone call come through. We're going to also put in, didn't think about that, the audio URL. So the prerequisite for sending or for having the pre-recorded call or pre-recorded audio file that you'll play during the call is that it's uploaded to blob storage. I think instead of just typing in all of this, we're not going to send the call so that we don't just sit here and watch me type in a URL.
One thing about the audio files is that you can use Azure Cognitive Services text-to-speech generation to effectively make the files at runtime. It's not real time, but you can do it at runtime, so where you generate audio files and then pump them into the service to call people and play.
Okay, so I'm going to plug in my phone, and then we're going to run the function and share it here. Is that great? So you see the phone. I'm going to go ahead and run this, and we will see a text message come in. Okay, I see some people are being kind of silly right now. Oh, and I messed up the payload. So we're not going to show that phone number or the text message come in, but you can see we're getting some, what would happen is you'd see a text message come in, and we'd also see the phone call show up, and when I hit accept the call, there would be a pre-recorded file that says your appointment is coming now, press 1 to hang up or 2 to cancel the appointment. Let's take a look at the code, and we can see how we actually build out this function. So I mentioned before, this is an HTTP trigger. That means we're just going to send that message body, and from the request body, I pulled out the source number and the outbound number. The source number, again, is the phone number that the call is coming from or the message is coming from. So that's what we purchased through Azure Communication Services. And the outbound number is the phone number that we are going to contact. After that, we're kicking off the 2 different workflows. So first, we're going to send an SMS message, and we're passing in the numbers and the message body. And then finally, we're going to send out the call. So we'll be sending both, sending the phone numbers again, both the source number and the target number. And we'll also have the audio URL, which is that pre-recorded file that's been uploaded to blob storage. Let's take a look at SMS first, because that is the simplest thing in this whole code. SMS SDK is so easy to use. All you have to do is pass in those 2 phone numbers and the message, and you can send an SMS message to your customers. So it's super simple, super easy, very lightweight. It's also a very effective way to communicate with customers, and we have a lot coming in the SMS area to build out functionality there. Now let's talk about phone calls. And the phone call is a slightly more complicated, a few more steps to take advantage of, or to go through, but it allows these complicated scenarios or these more interactive scenarios that help our users interact with the notifications that we're sending. So there's 3 steps with the calls that you need to take care of. One is initiating the phone call and creating the phone call. The second is handling the call flow state, or handling the different events that are going to happen during the call. And the third is to play the audio file and actually play the audio file for the customer. So to create the phone call, we're going to do a few administrative things like get our connection string from Azure Communication Services resource, and also get our phone numbers in line. But we're also going to set up our create call options. And these options help us define the properties that we want in the call. We have an app callback URL, and that's what's going to help us handle events that are going on during the call. I think Chris explained a little more about the DTMF or the touch tone. So if a user is interacting and pressing 1 to hang up or 2 to cancel the appointment, that's how we're going to handle those events. We also have the media type. This is just an audio call, audio file, so we don't need anything else there. And then lastly, we're going to subscribe to events like those DTMF events and participants updated, so if people are joining or leaving the call. So we have our call created. We can now actually create the call once we have our options set up. And then we can register to learn more about the state or status of the call and handle different call events. In this case, we are going to handle the call state. So we're handling if it's connected or disconnected. If it's connected, we're going to do a little more work and play the audio file. We have this connected event here, and we also have the disconnected. And if we're disconnected, we're just going to terminate the call and hang up. And now I want to talk, lastly, for the third step, a little bit more about playing the audio file. So the actual playing the audio file is not super interesting in this case. I mean, we have our URL for the pre-recorded audio file that was uploaded to blob storage. We're going to loop the message over and over. If the demo had worked, you would have heard it play over and over again. We also have our callback URI again to handle those events events that are coming through. And I think this is kind of something that didn't expand on as much earlier as I'd like to, but with the callbacks and those DTMF tones, like Chris was saying, we can build these more interactive experiences. So customers can, you start to build this state machine, right, where if someone is pressing 1, then you can play a different file, or if someone presses 2, you can kick off a workflow to move the appointment around or suggest new times for the appointment. So it just makes the notifications, especially in this phone call context, a lot more effective and interactive for our users that are receiving the calls. So that is how we built out the function. Pretty straightforward, pretty straightforward, pretty simple, especially with Azure Functions. I'm going to present from current slide, and we're going to wrap up here. So if you want to take a look at this sample and see how it actually works and get it to work on your own, you can check it out at aka.ms/acs-net-2021. You can also find more samples or learn more about Azure Communication Services at aka.ms/acs. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I want to thank you, Chris, for also explaining everything about Azure Communication Services. We'll be taking a little more time for questions. I think we have a few minutes to answer any questions that come up.
The one other thing I just want to note too is that the Service SDK that we built to make these phone calls and send SMS messages can also add end users. So you can imagine, like, sometimes there's a press 0, press 9. If I'm really confused by my appointment and I really want to talk to a human being, you can have that flow where the service then calls an employee. So an employee, say in a web app or a .NET desktop application, can answer a call and then talk to the person who might have a question about their appointment. With the voice and video system in general, it's not just telephony, it's voice, video over the internet, and telephony. It's one single service that can reach people anywhere, just like our chat service.
Can you route a call to a Teams operator, a Teams call operator with this? Maybe someone live, some live help.
That's a good question. So I think if you're in a call and you want to route to a Teams endpoint, that's a very interesting scenario. Right now we only have meeting interoperability, so you can interact with Teams meetings. Working with targeting Teams users or Teams call queues, it is something we're absolutely thinking about. It's a super good question. You can absolutely imagine why you want to forward someone to a Teams call queue. So it's something we're thinking about.
Right, yeah, okay. As soon as you have that hooked up, let me know. I'll have the Test Explorer bugs. Just call me directly on Teams if anyone's having an issue. But since you don't support it yet, I'm off the hook, I guess. So actually, this is just an interesting thing. So Azure Communication Services is great with lots of ease. They've been using it for a long time in real estate, and it helped the buyers visit houses remotely to help them reduce all of the physical visits. So got some love from there. Very, very cool. Let's see. This is an interesting one. So it looks awesome. Can I share screen instead of a camera with Azure Communication Services? Can I receive text messages or record video calls and save them? I guess on the target client device.
Yeah, so we support screen sharing. We support if you want to turn on or off camera, all of those standard call operations you can absolutely do with Azure Communication Services. You can also receive text messages. So we have two-way communication via SMS. And the last one for recording calls, we do have call recording available. So if you want to record any of those calls, and again, we're a platform offering, so if you did want to build customizations on top of any of these functionalities, you're totally empowered to do that.
Very cool. Okay, so there was a little bit of chat about this too. What are the costs associated with these things for one like SMS kind of thing? Do you have like it's 1 cent or 0.001 cents or 5 or what?
Do you remember that?
Where are we at?
It's a small number. It's some cents. I think it's. I don't want to speak to the actual number. It's on the website. Generally, the cost is going to be different per region and the type of number. So you have toll-free numbers that are global to the United States, or you have regional numbers that will use an area code that's more local. The pricing is a little different depending on the type of number. So.
Very cool. Looks like there's a lot of interest in just like, do we support UK phone numbers? Is that available?
Oh, no.
How are our
On
regions?
GitHub, we have a brief view of our regional roadmap for the next quarter. UK is on the list. It's something we're working on for sure. One thing that's a bit of a mitigation is if you want a number in a region that Azure doesn't currently support, is that you can connect your carrier to the service. But we are working on native phone number expansion. We want to hit the whole world. So.
Absolutely wonderful to hear. Well, thank you so much, Chris and Marianne. Actually, I think we have time for a couple more questions. Let me see. I'm trying to figure out which ones we've already done. There's a lot of just positive feedback in general. Yes, like best demos that we've seen so far. I think I love seeing the actual phone screen kind of show up in the midst of the demo. I know it was a little, getting all the JSON working and everything was kind of interesting. Actually, that was a question in chat too. People were commenting JSON versus YAML. How did you decide between, kind of an arbitrary bike shedding kind of question, but.
Oh, honestly, we picked JSON because it's easier and it's the standard. So it looks nice in Fiddler. And so it's nice for us day to day.
One of many standards, unfortunately, is what we run into with that kind of discussion. Thank you guys so much. I'll go ahead and talk to you all now. So I want to encourage you all to ask questions on Twitter and download .NET 6. Try it out. This is why we have all of these events with these lovely speakers, over 90 speakers throughout the day, over 24 hours of content. With people all over the world, so we'll be, switching off continuously. So hopefully you can all, catch a session in your time zone and everything, and kind of participate. Talk to us on chat. We're totally monitoring it and engaged. And thank you so much for sharing things.